Good evening and welcome to the December 9th, 2020 work session of the Penfield Town Board. We'll officially call the meeting to order, and please allow me to read our official notice into the record. Due to COVID-19 virus and the closing of the town operations consistent with the governor's executive orders, the December 9th, 2020 Town Board work session meeting will be held remotely via Zoom. This meeting will also be video recorded and broadcast live via the town's website at penfield.org, on the town's government access cable channel 1303, and on the streaming media device Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Please search Penfield TV in your device's app store. This is a free app. This meeting will later be transcribed. Questions regarding video coverage, please contact our team on the lower level of the town hall at 340-8661, and they'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, this evening, we'll get underway. We have our minutes from the October 28th, 2020 meeting, and would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
I move that they be approved, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Draw, seconded by Councilwoman Cole. I'll ask, are there any questions or comments regarding those minutes? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Great, thank you very much. Our next order of business our town monthly reports from our various department heads, and we have all but two of those in. They're due tomorrow, so I would expect the other couple would be in by the end of the end of the week. I want to thank all our department heads for those summaries. Some great information in there. I encourage all of us to take a close look at those. Even though I think I have a finger on the pulse of a number of things, I typically do send an email note out to the various department heads and either ask for a clarification or an update on some of the items. So I want to thank the department heads for the details that they provide in their monthly reports. Okay, this evening there are no public hearings and we do not have any guests. We will jump right into our action items. And our first action item is a request for a hold harmless agreement at 20 Thomas Murray Circle. And I'll recognize our town engineer and director of planning, Mark Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. On Zoom tonight, we have David and Shauna Gersh. They live at 20 Thomas Maria Circle. As part of an application to replace their shed, as the building department looked at it, some of our new mapping shows they do have a drainage easement or drainage inspection easement over their backyard. I can share my screen for those at home. I also my apologies. I'll wait for that to share. As well as I sent it to the board ahead of time that shows their property, showing the yellow hatch that shows or encompasses that drainage easement within their backyard. This is not a town-owned pond. It is a private pond facility, but as we typically do, we have an inspection easement over it to make sure it is maintained, to make sure that it's functioning properly, it's not filled in, et cetera, et cetera. But as I shared before, the Gershes were looking to replace their shed. And further review, it came up that there is this inspection easement over it. They previously gotten a permit for their shed. They previously gotten a permit for their pool that were issued by the town years before, but said, now they're looking to replace their shed. They've got a fence. It would be a good idea to have them get that memorialized, to get a hold harmless agreement for those items within that easement. So when and if they go to sell their home, at the 11th hour, they don't get, caught up by an attorney with that. So it is an inspection easement area for that. I say again, it's not our pond. The main drainage portion of the pond, it drains out towards Creek Street in the lower left corner of your screen. The main water that backs up, it is kind of a low flat area, kind of fills up this main part in the back. Not saying in an extreme event, it may come into the higher area. As I shared with the Gershes earlier, if the board were to consider granting a hold harmless agreement, I think there should be some consideration in there, some notation saying that, while we may grant the easement, if and when your shed does get wet, it's at your own, I won't say your own peril, but, your own acknowledgement that, if it does get wet, that it is a potentially drainage area in a 100-year storm event, it may get that high. So, and then obviously they may be under that understanding, but, to have something documented that, would carry forward when they sell the home, that somebody else comes in that, that we carry with it. But
So Mark, could, for the benefit
This is
of those that are zooming in, could you just highlight where, okay, thank you. You could highlight
so
where
this
where the shed is.
Shed is
where the
now, and they're
pool-
asking for a bit of a larger shed. They do have, some fencing in the back. I believe the pool is gone, and I can let the Gershes speak to that. I think it's a fire pit to my recollection now. But, here's their shed here. It is outside kind of that main pond areas in this lower left corner. Then, again, the discharge goes out towards Creek Street and then down into our infrastructure from there. But it does fall in that overall drainage area. As I also shared with the board, we did grant, or this board did grant early in the 2000s, a hold harmless agreement to the neighbor to have their pool, which is kind of a raised elevation pool, next door, has a hold harmless agreement already as well.
So board, before, and let me just say welcome to the applicants, David, and I believe Michelle?
Shauna.
Oh, Shauna, I apologize. I thought I heard Michelle. I apologize, Shauna. So welcome. I'm glad you could join us today. Sorry it's via Zoom, but that seems like our new norm these days. So at some point, maybe we can get together in person, but at least not at this time. So I want to just, before I turn the mic over to Shauna and to Mark, I just want to highlight what Mark had indicated right in the beginning. If we take a look at this and the map that he's got on the screen, hopefully everybody's seeing that. Hopefully also the board received a copy that Mark sent out. But if you take a look at the hatched area, that is the drainage, and he's running around with his little computer hand. That is that easement area. So the residents in that area, Mark and Shauna, and the next door neighbor, they own the property, but the property is in that easement area. And then I think the other important thing is just to mention that that is a private pond overall. I think that's another component that I just want to make sure that everybody, heard or at least acknowledges that. Overall, and then as Mark indicated, there is the current shed that is in that area. There is the pool area, and then there's other small appurtenances, fire pit and what have you. So with that, I would at least, board, before I ask if you have any questions, I would just ask the owners and the applicants if they would like to provide some additional information about this that we haven't received via their letter that Mark had sent in, and give them an opportunity to add any additional information you feel might be appropriate. So with that, David, Shauna, anything that you would like to add to the discussion?
Nothing specifically. The issue of the easement had come up originally. When the house was purchased, the survey map provided by the surveyors showed the edge of the easement as being sort of at the bottom portion, just south of our fence where the swale is. And so that, been shown as the limits of the easement. And so when we had applied for our shed, and when we had put our fence in, we assumed that we were within the limits of good. And obviously, when the original shed was reviewed, the town felt that as well. It was, after we had started talking a little bit about the swale itself and maybe what we could do to dig it out and help the drainage go a little bit better, and had talked to the town engineers, that they went in the basement, pulled the original maps, and said, oh, well, hey, this easement is actually much bigger than everybody thinks it is, and hence the relevance to the conversation today.
Okay. Thank you, David, thank you. And Mark had sent a letter that, or a memo that he attached to David and Shauna's correspondence, so that, Board, you should have both of those. So I'd ask at this time, Board, any specific questions for Mark Valentine at this point, based on what we've heard so far and the materials that we have seen?
Mark, can I just ask one question? On the size of the new shed that you want is, how much, it's hard to tell, how much bigger than the shed you have currently?
That's for,
Quite a bit,
that's for
quite a bit
David.
larger than
Yep.
what we're looking for, but within the 1% of lot size restriction.
Okay, 'cause I was just trying to find that on, okay.
Yeah, it still meets our code, so it doesn't need a variance for what they're requesting, but it is bigger than what's there now.
Did you get that, Deb?
Yes, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at yes, I did get it, and I was looking at what you sent us to, Mark. Okay.
No, I just wanted to make sure you heard what Mark had said, is that the proposed shed is bigger than the existing shed, but it is within code and does not require a variance.
I got that. Thank
Okay,
you.
good, I just want to make sure everybody got that.
Thank you very much, yes.
Yep. Other questions or comments?
Question for Mark, and maybe the owners know better, but you mentioned in the note to us, Mark, that this pond is generally dry. Do we know, over the years, how often it is, has it ever reached its capacity, or that entire area?
I mean, the homeowners maybe answer, it is designed as a detention pond, so it detains water in a storm event. So its intention is, it used to be seen in front of Wegmans, it would fill up like a bathtub, the storm's over, it drains back down. So its intent is to remain dry in normal dry conditions. They've sent me pictures showing that, much of it has filled. I don't know if it's ever gotten up, from what I've seen, up to their shed. But I know the other neighbors sent me pictures showing the water filling into that back area and saying, hey, we got an issue over here. And a little bit of education to say, no, that's a dry pond, that's its intent, that's what it's used for. That's where the water is supposed to be. So I think that calms some nerves that his intent is to fill up like a bathtub during a large storm event, and then it slowly drains back down. David and Shauna, you can probably speak to whether you've ever seen it up to the shed. I have not seen pictures to
Yeah, I
that
have
limit.
some pretty good pictures of. I work at home. I've been working at home for almost 20 years. So every time we get a big storm, I usually take pictures because it's interesting to sort of track over time.
Sure.
And of the biggest event I've seen to date, the shed area definitely doesn't get any water. If anything, typically what happens is the area that Mark highlighted, sort of in the lower corner, will almost always fill up with some water. And then if anything begins to back up, it backs up sort of up the swale area. Well south of the fence. Typically, the water sheds quite well down our yard to the swale and then off to the west.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Board, any other questions either for the owners or for Mr. Valentine? All right. Mr. Valentine, is there any additional input that you would like to provide that we haven't either already seen in the submission of the maps and paperwork or that we've discussed this evening that you'd like to enter into the record?
Just to reiterate that point, that I would, if the board is inclined to grant that hold harmless agreement, to add some additional language, and I can work with the town attorney to handle that language, just acknowledging that the shed would and the fence are within a drainage easement area. If and when it did get wet, whether with the Gershes or future homeowners, acknowledging the shed is there, but it's at their own risk to have it there, just to make sure we're covered and we didn't, grant something or hold harmless agreement that the shed got wet and, now the liability's on the town. So if the board's comfortable with that, I'd, like to add that language and then work with the town attorney to get that added into our standard template.
Great, thank you. I'll ask the board, any additional questions or comments for applicants or for Mr. Valentine? Okay. And I'll ask David and Shauna, any additional questions, comments for the board or for Mr. Valentine at this time?
No, we're in agreement with everything.
Okay, great, thank you. Board, if you're supportive and so inclined, I would entertain a motion of approval to move forward with this, articulating within the correspondence that we provide back to the owners, the discussion we had with the town engineer as it related to working with the town attorney on wording, just to recognize that the shed, the new shed would be in the easement area, and that it is, their risk in the event of a major storm, if in fact some or a portion of that were to get wet or have water in and around it for a short period of time, just to acknowledge that so that everyone is on the same page for them or for potentially any future owners of that property. So I would entertain a motion if the board is so inclined.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Supervisor, to move forward with the hold harmless agreement, including the additional language that was discussed here tonight.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Ockenden, seconded by Councilwoman Draw. I'll ask one last time, any additional comments or input before we call the roll? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval for this matter.
Draw,
Aye.
Cole,
Aye.
LaFountain,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Ockenden,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you. And David and Shauna, thank you for joining us this evening. I would ask that you stay in contact with Mr. Valentine, and we'll get correspondence and get this finalized, and then you'll be off and running with your new shed, and that'll also include the existing fence, and we'll have that memorialized for your purposes as well as any future owners.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you much. Thank you to the town board.
Great. Thank you for your time, to you and your families. Be well, be safe, enjoy your holidays.
Happy
You
holidays.
as well. Happy
All right,
holidays.
thank you very much. We appreciate
Thanks.
it. Have a great night. Okay, board, we'll continue on with our agenda. Our next item is the creation of Crowne Point Section 4 Special Improvement District. This is a matter that we heard last Wednesday evening, and again, I'll recognize our town engineer and Director of Planning, Mr. Valentine.
Thank you. Thanks to Jim Costello for handling this one at last 2 weeks ago at the meeting. Had the hearing on the Crowne Point Section 4 district formation. Basically, this affects the 7 homes that are around it. The new builds as part of it would handle, the district would be created to handle any improvements, overall maintenance of the pond. Everybody in town pays a drainage fee or into the drainage fund, so it would handle the overall drainage capabilities of it, but the special improvement district would pay for the mowing of it weekly, the overall aesthetics of that. So there are no other residents that would be affected by it, but the 7 new homes to be built that would drain to the pond, and why it was created for that. Share screen, and then, so this is the last phase of the Crowne Point subdivisions. 1, 2, and 3 is finishing now. 1 is off of Plank Road. 2A, 2B are pretty much completed. Section 3B is they're building out homes now, and then Section 4 is actually off of Shoecraft Road and Garden Hill Lane, and then would encompass these 7 homes here with the dedicated pond in the back. We already have a dedicated pond on the other side, as well as a drainage way that then connects up into our regional pond that's up on Plank Road. So we've got a corridor there that all kind of ties together that would all be town land, and then with the special improvement district, those homeowners that are benefiting from it or creating the need for it would be the ones that would pay for that.
Okay. Board, we can at least let Mr. Valentine know that his best interests were represented by Mr. Costello, who spoke on behalf of this application at the meeting. And I would ask the board, based on what we heard at the public hearing and this evening, any questions or concerns for Mark and/or Mr. Costello on this matter? Seeing none and recognizing that this is a normal process throughout the subdivision process that we have, I would ask for a motion of approval to move forward with this special improvement district for Crown Point Section 4.
I'll move this forward for the approval of the special improvement district for Crown Point.
Thank you, Linda. Is there a second?
Second?
I'll second.
Sorry, you do it, Andy. Sure.
Okay, we've got a couple of board members so excited to be able to do that. Councilwoman Draw defers to Councilman Moore. So been moved by Councilwoman Cole, seconded by Councilman Moore. I'd ask any further questions or comments. Seeing none, we'll ask for a roll call vote of approval for Crown Point Section 4 Improvement District.
Draw,
Aye.
Cole,
Aye.
LaFountain,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Ockenden,
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you very much. This will take us to item C, Chick Magnet request for a conditional use permit at 1794 Penfield Road. And we did hold a public hearing on that. And some materials, additional materials were submitted that Mr. Costello did forward over to us. And at this point, I'll ask Mr. Costello to pick up from here.
Thank you very much. Yes, we did have the public hearing on December 2nd. At that public hearing, we did receive a letter from Mr. Rout, who's a neighbor of the property, indicating that he had concerns regarding the condition of an existing fence and some landscaping that had fallen into a state of disrepair and the fence is dilapidated. I talked to the owners of the property. Dr. D'Amelio was good enough to send a response letter the next day, which I did send on to the board. And then in addition to that, addressing his concerns, and we can talk about that in a couple minutes. And then finally, I did receive a sign package for the property. There were 2 signs proposed. One is the freestanding sign out on Penfield Road. The other sign is a wall-mounted sign on the south face of the building. Both signs are in-kind signs to those that were on the site as Penfield Hots operated there. At that point in time, I have not received any additional information. And that's kind of where we are right now with the application.
Okay. Thank you. I think what I'd like to do with this, I would like to take it in 2 parts, Board, if you're okay. The first part would be the conditional use side of that, what we heard by way of what they're proposing, what they want to do, and any questions we have there. And then from there, then let's talk about the sign and do it that way. So I'll ask the board any questions or further questions for Mr. Costello as it relates to the conditional use portion of this application, moving from former Penfield Hots to now proposed Chick Magnet. Okay, board, you're comfortable, with the moving from one to the other. The second item associated with the conditional use, I think that Lisa forwarded over to you some information that we received regarding the condition of the property, specifically around fencing and specifically around, some other buffering trees and cleanup of the site and what have you. And so hopefully everybody got a chance to get that and see some of those photos. And I would definitely say that there's some opportunity for, some cleanup there. So discussion on that particular matter.
Well, Mr. Supervisor, I actually was walked in that property and looked at where the the repairs are needed, or they're looking to do some improvements there on that buffering up there. So I think that, I know Mr. Costello sent us over what, the proposal to do that. So I think that that's definitely needed in that area. If you haven't taken, the pictures do the justice, show that it is in need of some improvement up there.
Okay. So the thing that I think the board needs to discuss is what does that look like, to what degree, and when. I might offer up that we did receive, and I think Mr. Costello shared with us, Stephen D'Amelio, who is the owner of the property at Penfield Place Holdings, did acknowledge the fact that the fence had fallen into disrepair. And he has talked about ideally that late spring or early summer, when the weather is a little bit more accommodating, that be taken care of. I will tell you, from my personal opinion, is that a piece of that or a portion of that fence is down now. To take the rest of that fence down will not take a lot of effort. And at the very least, I would recommend to the board that work be done, if the board's inclined to grant the conditional use, that the work of cleaning up the fence, getting it off-site cleaned up, that be done prior to the opening of this business. As I said, whether it's the property owner or the applicant there, it's not going to take a lot of effort, but it'll definitely, it'll definitely improve the site overall. And at the very least, that's what I would recommend.
Like I said, I agree, Mr. Supervisor. After looking at it, it didn't seem like it would take a lot to replace to remove it and do what, if they can't, what they can't do now, they can do in the spring. As long as it's written. I mean, I don't know if we can put it into the agreement.
Well, again, as I look at the photos, as I've driven by and looked at it from both the Liberty Street side and then from the property side, looking north, if you will, being able to take that down is a little bit of sweat equity and maybe an hour or two to get that cleaned up. I mean, we're not talking like we have to bring in cranes and big equipment and a work crew and everything like that. And again, from an eyesore standpoint, from both sides, I think very least getting that cleaned up and getting it all cleaned up and not carrying it over into the spring or summer is the right way to go.
Agreed.
And then I think if you took a look at the photos, I think there are some materials on the other side of the fence that I might consider as debris and garbage, whether that be some paper, cardboard, whether that be some metal products, what have you. And I would expect as part of the cleaning up the fence that those items be cleaned up as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So I think the letter that we received also goes on and talks a little bit about any additional cleanup by way of potentially removal of trees or replanting of trees, and would ask what, if any, thoughts the board has on that.
I don't know, we really haven't talked about that, looking at a landscape plan. I mean, is that something you want to do? I mean,
Well,
I don't know. It wasn't discussed.
So that was part of the input, part of the feedback that we did receive on that was to take a look at that. I think there's a balance, board, and I'll give you just my opinion. My opinion is that that operation has been there for many years, and so definitely cleaning up the fence and taking care of some of the other items that may be dropped there, left there, blown there, whatever the case is, getting that cleaned up is the right thing to do. I think the broader issue about berming, landscaping, all of that, going from not a changing the building, going from one use as a restaurant to another use as a restaurant, the conditional use component, that's one thing. I think if there were some additions, new builds and things like that, then I think it's a different story, and I think a broader conversation about added landscaping, added fencing, and other things like that. Again, that's just my personal opinion. I think, again, the balance is that you have an operation that's been there for decades, and we need to at least look to strike that balance of getting things cleaned up, but not being so unreasonable that the work can't be done and the business closes either. So again, I put that out for at least thoughts and consideration.
I think it's fair what you're saying about taking down the fence, at least cleaning that area up as much as possible in the next couple of weeks before it gets really, snow covered and so on, and they open. But just hearing the applicants last week, I've never heard them before, but I thought they were very eloquent in saying how much they've been there. They went there when it was Penfield Hats, and they were at the school, and they really want to clean it up, and they have been doing that, fixing up the building to make it more usable and safe for people. And I'd like to hear from them, because just the way they talk makes me think that they would have no problem beautifying it too in the spring, which I hope they would. But for us right now, yeah, I would put in there that before we move it, that it'd be understood that at least that fence is down, so it's all level, like it looks decent. And come springtime, that they go ahead and do some improvements, which I kind of think they will, but I'd like to hear them.
Well, the only other thing I just put on the table is that they are looking to lease the building. They're not the property owners. So while they may have some interest to do some different things, at the end of the day, the Penfield Place Holdings is the ultimate. So in this case, I feel comfortable that we can press the applicant and the owner to say, hey, this is going to be a condition of approval. Get that site cleaned up by way of fencing and any debris that's collected in and around that fence. And they open as soon as that gets done. If they do that in a week or if they do that in 2 months, that's up to them overall. Mr. D'Amelio did commit to getting the area cleaned up. I just think dragging it out to spring or summer is not the appropriate thing.
Mr. Supervisor, I would agree with Councilwoman Cole's comments. It's great to have this new business coming into the Four Corners after we lost one. It's great to have that space occupied. So I'm excited to see that get opened up and moving. But I concur that the cleanup I don't think is too significant or shouldn't take too much time, and hopefully our weather kind of cooperates and we can get that kind of basic cleanup done in a quick time frame, hopefully.
Okay. Other questions or comments regarding the conditional use side of things? I think the other thing that would be a condition of approval gets back to what we've done in the Four Corners and some of our other business districts, and that is the enclosure for the dumpsters. And I think that just goes without saying. We've worked hard on trying to do that, make that happen. I know that we've had Mr. Lindskog in the past who lived within the general Four Corners area. He would remind us on a regular basis about the enclosures, and I think there is an opportunity to get that taken care of, to provide an adequate buffer and to allow them to still get in there when needed. But the enclosed dumpsters is something, again, that we've been looking to do, especially in this particular zoning district. So that would be another item that I would see if, as a condition of approval, to make that happen as well.
That makes sense. We should have mentioned that during the public hearing, so that's on us, but that's good that you're adding it now. I agree.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a question on that. There's two dumpsters in that, right there at that, in this photos and right behind the parcel, or right behind the building. Are those both for that particular, the old Penfield Hots or for the new Chick Magnet? Are both those dumpsters for that?
I don't believe that's the case, but so that I don't get too far in the weeds, I'll recognize Mr. Costello. I mean, one of the things additionally we have been doing to have the enclosure, but then also to try to limit the number of dumpsters. So instead of having a half a dozen dumpsters, to try to get it down to maybe a couple of dumpsters and be shared. But let me recognize Mr. Costello, who can probably provide a little bit better information on that.
Yes, the building, the subject building that we're reviewing is just one of two buildings on the property. The other building is the larger building that has several tenants in it, including the owners of the property. The owners also own the building immediately to the west of that property as well, and I think that they share that dumpster with several businesses.
Okay.
So I think what I heard there is that two dumpsters, but they serve basically three different facilities. Okay, other
At least
questions?
three, not more.
I'm sorry. Other questions or comments on the conditional use side of things?
Mr. Supervisor, real quick, I would just like to note that I do think that the opportunity to clean that site up is before us right now. Certainly, I think what you've proposed is reasonable, to get the fence down as soon as possible. Because there are areas of the fence that are already down, and it is pretty unsightly, but to get that done ASAP, and then maybe as a condition of approval, set a date sometime in the spring or early summer, for a new fence to be put up, and maybe some type of consideration for the enclosure around the dumpsters, because it does tend to look unsightly back there. And with a new tenant coming in, and hopefully the tenant is successful, I think the opportunity is now to try to get the site as presentable as we can, moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Other comments, board? Okay, so it sounds like with overall the conditional use moving from Penfield Hots to Chick Magnet, board generally is supportive of that. Some of the conditions are to address the fence and debris and get that taken care of prior to opening of the business, and addressing the enclosure, and then looking at the site in the spring for possible refencing or other type of enhancements. Okay. So if everyone's good with that, and then let's shift gears and then talk about the signs. I believe they showed us two signs, one on the direct.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I don't know if it's proper for me, I'm not a part of the board, but I was invited to the Zoom. Mr. Supervisor, can I just get some clarification? I'm Stephen DeMiller, I'm the owner, and I was invited by Mr. Costello to attend the Zoom just in case there was any questions regarding anything that came up.
Sure thing.
Is it possible for me to address and just get some clarification?
Would definitely at this point would entertain any questions that you might have.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I certainly appreciate the board doing this. And as mentioned, I respond to Mr. Costello in our letter, and myself and my partner are more than amenable. We understand, and we certainly recognize the state of disrepair in that back fence. And I will have to say, I think we've probably put most of our effort at beautifying and keeping up the rest of the property. We cut back some trees. We did some wood chips in the past couple of years on the far side to beautify that, and of course what we tried to do elsewhere. So the question becomes, and we see no reason why we can't take down the fence. The only concern I have is twofold. One, I know the owners of Chick Magnet are very excited about starting, and my understanding is the board would vote for approval at next Wednesday meeting. Is that correct? And then if all went well, the permit would be issued on the following Thursday. So with that being said, that gives us basically 7 days to get that fence down. I would certainly be happy to do my best, and if I can do it myself, I would. There are some extenuating circumstances of what we can physically do. And I do have a concern that we may not be able to satisfy the board's request of getting that fence at least down before next Wednesday. So I didn't know if there was a certain date. I have no problem, like I said, of getting it down. We may have to find a contractor to come down, cut down the remaining boards. My partner is not going to be available to help with this at the time. So I just wanted to kind of get clarification to not hold Chick Magnets up. Is there any leeway and amount of time that they would give us to take the fence down in order to satisfy the board? And then okay, well, we'll start with that. Thoughts on that?
So I'll give you my personal thoughts, and then certainly I'll welcome any input from the board. I always believe that different folks should have skin in the game, and what I was hearing from the applicants at the public hearing is that they have an interest in helping to get themselves opened up, help that whole business area and what have you. So some sweat equity by others than yourself, I might encourage that. I would say that I could probably go over and kick that fence over pretty easily without a lot of effort, what's left there, and then getting that hauled out. So I may tend to be a little more stingy on the amount of time that I would allow to have that happen, and encourage that to be done sooner rather than later. But again, I'll welcome input from the board as well, because we all have equally weighted votes on this, and while we want to be reasonable, we also don't want to be having this, or at least I know I don't want to be having this conversation 2, 3, 4, or 5 months from now. So I hope that is makes clear what my position is.
Mr. Supervisor, I kind of share your position. I mean, I'm a little bit more flexible on, the applicant's concern. I can understand the fact that if, a partner or whoever may not physically be able to do it, or him himself may not physically be able to do it, get somebody in. I think there are plenty of contractors that probably could come in pretty quick for a day job or a half-day job. I'm certainly comfortable putting it in writing that they have, 2 weeks or, something like that, 3 weeks to get the fence down, get the site cleaned up. And that's where I would ask Mr. Costello to maybe put in some parameter. I mean, whether it's some type of assessment fee or something like that until it gets put down, some type of incentive. I think Dr. D'Amelio has shown an interest in good faith to bring it down, and I want to trust that, and I have no reason not to trust his statements. And I certainly understand that it might take a little bit more than 7 days to get that fence down and clean up the site. So I'm a little bit more comfortable to give them a little extra time, but I think we should have a clause or a caveat in there that it needs to be done by a certain time frame, where there's some assessment or penalty. And then I'm really glad to hear that he understands and sees the benefits of having a new fence up there, and certainly I think that could be done at some point in the near future too. Not expecting that to be done in 7 days or 14 days, but certainly moving into the spring or something along those lines. I think is reasonable to expect. I mean, there's construction companies do work in the winter, or all the time, and so they just do it. And I think that that's something that can be done sooner versus later also. So, appreciate the owner's willingness to clean up the site, to make it look more presentable. Happy to see a new restaurant come in that looks like they're committed to the town of Penfield and are excited to be there. That's always a good thing. But I am comfortable, again, just giving a little extra time to get that done right and to get that cleaned up. I'm okay extending it more than 7 days, but I think it should be in writing what date it needs to be removed and cleaned up by, and whatever that or may be, so it just doesn't drag out for weeks and weeks and months, and then it just never really happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it could be a condition. It could be a condition, and why not just say it has to be done before the end of the year? Because look where we are already, And if one's going to take down that fence, you don't want to wait until Christmas. It's going to be, potentially a lot more snow and everything. You want to do it while the weather's good. So that's the incentive in itself. But, we could say that we support it with the condition that the fence comes down by the end of 2020. And if it's not down by 2020, well, somebody gets hauled back in here for a conversation about what's going on. I don't know. Something along those lines. I don't know if we can put down some assessment. I don't know if that's an ability of ours. We'd have to ask Jim. Anyway.
Supervisor, could I ask a question?
Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. Dr. D'Amelio, thank you for your comments and your support of this. And I know you've been a very good steward of that property, of the properties on. I wanted to ask you if we were to give you an extension, is there a time frame? I know with COVID, I'm trying to have some work done in my home. So I know contractors are backlogged a little bit at this time. But that being said, how much time do you think you would need to get that cleaned up? Do you have an idea about that?
So, thank you, through the chair, through the supervisor. I would look at trying to do it this weekend if we could. I mean, and in all honesty, we're not looking to delay it. We're just trying to first of all, we don't want to hold up chick magnet. So if something comes up and we can't physically do it, that's why I kind of asked at least for an extension. For all intents and purposes, we both agree, both my partner and I, that we should do something. It's probably the only part of the property that we haven't really attended to. And it's simply because we go back and forth on whether we're ever going to develop it or not. And so we haven't really done anything, because when the time comes that if and when we do decide to do development, then, as I mentioned in my letter, we would go through the town for guidance on how we should buffer and what we would really want to do. But until that time, and I agree, we haven't, and when it came to our attention, we looked and we said, yeah, you know what? It does look lousy. Let's fix it. And I've always liked it to be a little park-like setting there anyways. I mean, you go through there any time of the day and there's a whole herd of deer and everything eating and things like that. So to answer your question and not be so long-winded, my intent would be to try and get after it as soon as possible. But if we do run into something where there are good pieces of that fencing that need to be cut or pulled down, I'm just saying I want to be able to not hold up chick magnet. So if I can get it done this weekend, I'd be happy to do it. At least move it down and maybe store it somewhere out of sight, the pieces, so that I can then get in touch with Suburban or whoever, so we can get not dumpster, but at least get them to haul it away. So that would be my intent. Now, can we extend it to like Ms. Cole said, maybe the end of the year or something like that? I mean, I certainly think that's more than reasonable. If we run into problems that I think we can't, I would be happy to come back to the board and explain the reason why with maybe another date until we can finalize a contractor or something. I don't know if that would be feasible. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So you indicated, Doctor, that you might have a couple of questions.
No, just a clarification on the dumpsters. One is actually a dumpster and one is a recycle for cardboard. And that really handles the whole property. So we've tried to keep the optics of that down. We don't want dumpsters all over the place and things like that. So that was the other question.
All right, great. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. All right, with that said, please stay on the line, Doctor, if you will. Let's go back to the signage. I think I started to say that there were 2 signs that are being proposed, the one on the directory sign and the other one on the building itself. I believe Mr. Costello forwarded over the renderings of those, and I see Mr. Valentine is using his magic on the screen. So it looks like replacing the existing sign, Penfield Hots, with the chick magnet at both locations, both the directory sign and on the building. So I'd ask the board any questions you might have of the signage. It's essentially duplicating same square footage, just with their different logo and what have you.
Mr. Supervisor, just a question for Mr. Costello. I think I'd forwarded a note over to you, but I'm not sure I received a clarification on the sign out by the road. So it would be on the sign by Dunkin' Donuts, is that accurate?
It is the freestanding sign out in front of Dunkin' Donuts that serves the entire property. And they'll be taking down, if they haven't already, the old Penfield Hots placard, and then replacing it with their chick magnet placard. It's not any bigger or any smaller. It's the exact same size.
Okay.
Are there other questions on the signage or clarification on the signage from Mr. Costello?
No, I'm good with the signage, Mr. Supervisor. It falls within what is already existing, so I think it's pretty simple.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore. All right. If the board is at a point that they would like to offer a motion of approval for the conditional use, that would also include some of our previous conversations about the fencing and things. Before I do that, as what I always like to do, just to go around the horn real quick to make sure that we've got everything into the record that we believe should be into the record. I'll start with Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello, is there anything additional that you would like to add to this discussion that hasn't already been added to the record?
Just some clarification. We did identify the end of this year, the 30th of December, as being the date that the fencing should be removed, without having Dr. D'Amelio to come back to the board for a rationale as to why not.
Yep.
And then secondly, we did talk about replacement of the fencing, at least on those properties that are abutting this site, because obviously you've got headlights and everything else going into those back properties on a regular basis. Is there a specific time frame that the board is comfortable with in terms of working with Dr. D'Amelio to get get the fencing back up on those properties at least?
I think I heard, and I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think I heard Councilwoman Cole indicate that maybe come springtime, that would be the time then to take a look at a replacement fencing at that location. So Linda, I just want to make sure I didn't mishear anything, and that you had identified maybe a springtime to take a look at that.
Yeah, we've done that before, haven't we? That we can just, we can call them in come springtime. Does it have to be a specific date?
Well, I think if you have a specific date, there's a time frame to work to, and if there's
The
a
weather,
problem.
you know?
Yeah, but if there's a problem, they can always come to you and say, we've got issues because of the weather, whatever the case may be. If the ground's frozen, they're certainly not putting a fence in. But at least if you have a time frame to work from, it gives them the ability to work towards that date.
How about April 1st? Yeah.
April 1st,
I'm
April
fine with
30th.
April 1st.
I'm sorry?
He's fine with April 1st.
I'm good with April 1st.
Yep, okay, so if we have an unusually 10 feet of snow and we've got frozen tundra, then we may have to push that, but at this point, we'll use April 1st as that date to at least do that follow-up check-in.
And we could have them come in on
Yeah,
a work session or
Mr.
something.
Supervisor, real quick if I can, I mean, Dr. D'Amelio has been gracious enough to show a willingness to put that fence up, and I just would encourage him that if he does get a contractor and he gets a good price and the contractor can fit it in and winter's not going to make a difference, digging the holes and putting up the fence, then just do it as soon as possible. If he gets that good price and with a reputable contractor and the date can be done sooner, it doesn't have to be done March 28th or something like that. It could be done February, January. I mean, contractors work during the winter outside, everywhere. And so if he does get a good price and he gets a contractor that has an opening and is prepared to put a nice fence up, then just go ahead and do it, not have to wait until spring. Since Dr. D'Amelio's, been willing in writing and here in this Zoom meeting, to put the fence up regardless. So I appreciate him doing that. I appreciate his openness and trying to clean up that site, and I'll take him for his word. And I have no reason not to believe that it will be done and it will be done correctly. So thank you, Dr. D'Amelio, for that. And I think that ultimately the businesses will benefit and the residents on Liberty Street will benefit with the property being cleaned up and a fence going up sooner versus later.
Agreed.
Okay. Mr. Costello, any additional comments?
No, I agree with Mr. Moore. I would suggest that there might be an opportunity for Dr. D'Amelio to place the fence even closer to his parking area so that he does not have to go into the vegetative area that's gone to a state of fallen trees and everything else. It might be easier for him just to put it right on the edge of the pavement area so he doesn't have to mess around with that area.
Okay. All right. I'll ask board any additional comments on this particular item. And then we still have I'm assuming we still have Dr. D'Amelio on the line. Doctor, any questions, any further questions for the board this evening?
No, that sounds great. Yeah, that's fine. We'll start working on seeing who we can. Well, I can certainly look to speak to Mr. Costello regarding type of fencing. I mean, we can duplicate what we have or get something that even looks nicer, depending, we want to keep it similar to what the design of, what would allow and all that. So, no, I have no problem with that. April 1st, if we wait till April 1st, who knows what we're going to have around here as far as weather, but certainly if we get a break, I'd be happy to do this. And then I'll start looking to see where we can get for contractors and specifications for everything. So I appreciate that.
Okay, very good, sir. All right, board, then with that, I would entertain a motion of approval for the conditional use, taking into account all the matters that we have discussed, and Mr. Costello has feverishly been making notes as he looks to put a resolution together for the board.
I'll make the motion to approve chip magnet going into the old Penfield Hots with the conditions that we've been discussing about the enclosure for the property, that we have an adequate garbage enclosure, that they take down the property owners take down the existing fence by December 30th, and that by April 1st a replacement fence be installed. We like the sign is acceptable. That's it, right?
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Supervisor.
Been moved by Councilwoman Cole, seconded by Councilman Ockenden. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Thank you. This will take us, and Dr. D'Amelio, thank you for joining us. You're welcome to stay on and continue to see all the good work being done in your local government. However, understand if you have something else that is more pressing, we respect that fact as well. With that, we'll move on to item D, Arcadia CBD, request for new wall-mounted signs, and that's at 2118 2118 5 Mile Line Road, and I'll recognize Mr. Costello.
Thank you. Several months ago, Sebastian, who I believe is online with us this evening, had requested a wall-mounted sign in the place of the existing sign that's there. He proposed to modify the name of the business to Acadia CBD and Crowne. The board was concerned because at that point in time, there was more emphasis on CBD and Crowne than there was Acadia. There was no Acadia sign on the building that would have identified the name of the business, and the board expressed concern for that. Shortly after that, Sebastian submitted a new plan showing the sign that you see here is with Acadia CBD and Crowne. His request is to allow that sign to be replace the existing sign over the door. And in addition to that, Mark, there's the 2118. In addition to that, he would like to place a second sign underneath the existing sign on the south face of the building, which currently has the Divine Hair sign in it. It'd be, no, Mark, keep going to, yep. It would be immediately under that sign, the exact same size as the sign that's there for Divine Hair. So I have sent that material to you, so I know the board has the material, and I'll let you look at it.
Okay, board, thoughts, comments, discussion. Let's do this in two parts, if we could. Let's discuss the main sign on 5 Mile Line Road, the one that's on the screen right now that Mark has put up for us, and essentially to take Arcadia CBD and expand that out to include the Crowne as well. And I would ask thoughts, comments, concerns, issues. Same square footage, just some different or added wording to what's there today. No expansion of the sign or the sign parameters, just what is shown on the screen.
Mr. Supervisor, this is Andy Moore. I'm fine with the sign as being proposed. It's within the parameters of the existing sign, so I'm good.
Okay. Other comments?
Yeah, I don't care for the sign, but it does have the name of the business, and that was what was missing. So, you know, I mean, it works, and it's fair. It's within, like Andy just said, within the sign specs. So, I guess, you know, kind of grudgingly, I support it.
Okay. All right.
Well, to Councilwoman Cole's point, it's kind of a bland-looking sign, but that's not for me to decide. That's for the owner to decide how he wants to present his business. So to me, I mean, that's, you know, it's just a bland-looking sign, but that's not my call. That's the business owner's call.
Okay. Any additional comments? Seeing none, let's shift to the other sign. And by way of full disclosure, I did share my thoughts with the board. That sign is a sign that what I'll call is pre-existing non-conforming at the time. And what I had offered up to the board is that to add on, essentially double the size of that sign, I don't believe is the appropriate thing. If anything, I would be supportive of taking the existing sign and splitting the existing sign between Divine Hair and Arcadia, but not to increase the size of what I would consider pre-existing sign, not to add to that pre-existing issue.
Yeah, and am I able to speak on that as well?
Sit tight for a moment, and I will recognize you when the board has done the discussion. So, board, any additional thoughts or comments on that sign on the south side of the building?
Mr. Supervisor, may I ask, so that is the only building, that's the only part of that, any building up there that has actually two signs, that has Divine Hair is allowed on the front and the side, correct? Of any of those other buildings? That
No.
we have two signs on a building?
That is not correct. I'll I'll recognize Mr. Costello for him to articulate that a little bit better.
Thank you. The building itself, if you look towards the north side, right by the intersection, there's that Garcon Tailor Shop has got a sign there. They've also got one around the corner on Penfield Road. So there were two signs identifying that business, there are two signs identifying the Divine Hair business on that building. There are other signs. I believe the Canandaigua National Bank also has two signs. So it's not uncommon to have two signs. But as Mr. LaFountain stated, that is a pre-existing non-conforming sign at this point in time.
So I'm not, as I had indicated, I'm not looking to, add on to the sign, but sharing of that existing sign so that both Divine Hair and Arcadia both have exposure on that side. But again, using the existing square footage versus doubling the size of that.
I would agree with what with your thoughts, Mr. Supervisor, because I would not like to see that sign on that side of that building doubled in size. And if it's amenable to share that sign, as you said, I think I could agree to that. But as far as putting another sign on that building, I agree. I don't think we need another sign on that building.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mr.
I agree too. I agree with Tony because that's, there's one business in between two businesses, and it too should have the ability to be have a second sign.
Mr. Supervisor, Andy Moore here. I concur with your assessment on that, not increasing the sign, increasing the size of the sign, and allowing both businesses to use that existing one sign within the dimensions that we see in front of us right now. So I agree with your assessment.
Mr. Supervisor, just a question maybe for Mr. Costello, but this last session when we reviewed this, we talked about the sandwich board sign that would be outside. That's still part of the plan, I assume?
I believe so, and he is entitled by code to have a sandwich board sign as long as it does not obstruct access through the sidewalk area or the right-of-way.
And I'll recognize the business owner because I was probably very hard on him about his placement of that sign and putting it in Shuffleburgers Park and putting it in different places that were not in front of his business. And I will let him know that I've recognized and appreciate the fact that he has kept that there in front of his business and not had that over on other properties. So I was hard on him. And I want to make sure that he also knows that I recognize and appreciate the fact that he has been respecting the ordinance. Other discussion by the board before I open it up for the business owner. Okay, so please identify yourself for the record, and then any questions or comments you might have for the board.
Yeah, this is Sebastian. I just want to let you know in the meantime there that it was just a banner under the sign, not building a whole new sign under it. So it would just be with grommets, on the building. It could be taken out at any time. I just wanted to have clarified that before any discussion.
Okay. That typically is not something that is permitted under our sign ordinance. Banners are permitted, and it's on a very limited basis and for a very specific period of time, typically a week, 3 times a year, and we've just increased that to 4 times a year. And again, it is in conjunction with some special event that you might have, a sale, a grand opening, something along those lines. But it's not intended to be a permanent sign on any building location.
Okay, perfect. So if we were looking to do something for a temporary basis, like if, for example, if we were to go to, Red in our area and we went to curbside pickup, I could just put like temporary signs saying, curbside pickup available with their, phone number or what have you.
You would have to get a special permit to do that through our building department. So it's just not something that you wake up on a Monday morning and decide to put it up Monday afternoon. You would have to just make sure that you plan for that and worked with our building department. And it's a pretty straightforward process. You can actually apply for that online.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Okay. I'll ask Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello, is there anything that we haven't discussed on this matter that you believe should be part of the record?
It sounds like the board's supportive of his proposal to modify the sign to a new sign. He will have to get a permit from the building department for a sign, and we'll work with him to get that taken care of as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Board, I'll ask any additional comments, discussion on this matter. All right, and as a courtesy to the business owner, Sebastian, any further questions for the board at this time?
Oh, that'll be it for today. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you guys all stay safe and have a great night.
Thank you, and happy holidays to you and your family. With that, board, I would entertain a motion of approval supporting what we had discussed this evening regarding the modified sign on the west side of the building, and then the discussion that we had regarding the sign on the south side of the building. So if there is an opportunity for Divine Hair and Arcadia to share that sign, and then also recognizing the fact that if the business owner had some special event or unique need, could apply for a temporary permit for a banner consistent with our ordinance. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Moved by Councilman Moore. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Ockenden. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote by our clerk, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further business to come before the board this evening, the December 9th, 2020 work session of the town board will stand adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Thank you very much for the board zooming in. We continue to be challenged with COVID, but we're doing it safely. Thank you to Mr. Valentine, Mr. Costello for being here, and of course our ace Deputy Town Clerk who supports the board during our work sessions. This will be the last work session that we'll have for 2020. So for those viewing, special thank you for participating. Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2021. Thank you to our team downstairs, Penfield TV, that keeps us live and together via Zoom during these times. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.